adult language and discussions. If you're easily offended, do not continue.
We would be honored if you would join us.
How are you feeling? Your latest workups on your condition indicate that all damage has been reversed. Recovery is total. I believe you have been quite fortunate. No further thanks are necessary, Commander, but you are most welcome. It is my function and pleasure as a medical droid to help and heal human beings.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Star Wars from the Bacta Tank. This is the Star Wars Rebels edition that you're listening to first. If you're listening to us live, we're going to be doing a couple different shows, 2 shows back to back. But we are starting with the Star Wars Rebels broadcast first. If you're listening on demand, then hey, keep listening. So how are you doing this afternoon, David?
The force is strong in this one.
Yeah. Has to be on a Sunday, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I had to muster up energy. I have like 3 cups of coffee over here. Plus, we got this fat-ass beat.
Dude, if they could actually make a Bacta Tank full of coffee, that'd be fantastic right now.
I know. Put us in a vat of coffee. Instead of it being Bacta water, put us in coffee. Starbucks. That's terrible. All right. So, again, Star Wars Rebels edition. Now, after 2 weeks of another hiatus, you know, speaking of that, Dave, they really know how to draw these episodes out.
They do. It's
a little frustrating.
It's a little frustrating because it was like funny because like last weekend I was like pretty much all raring to go on Saturday, and all of a sudden they play the same episode. I'm like, what the hell's going on? And It takes me to literally Google the news and say, oh, there's no new Star Wars Bacta Tank. Which they never even really mentioned openly what date the new episode was going to come out.
Yeah, they. It seems like for the past 3 years now, they've just dragged out these episodes. And I get why they do it. There's certain times of the year that you have to do certain things, particularly with this year with the election interfering, and then you have, of course, the holidays coming up and Thanksgiving.
Well, we understand that, dude. I mean, because
it's just also frustrating. How about you release your episode? At least give us 9 episodes in a row or 7 episodes in a row. I mean, how many breaks have we taken? And there's been 6 episodes. We have not. We're 6 episodes in technically, and we've already had 2 breaks.
And that's just, it ruins the momentum.
Yeah, it does, right?
The
okay,
season.
So it's not just, I'm not being a Star Wars baby.
No.
Okay.
I mean, like, honestly, it ruins just as a viewer watching a narrative.
Yeah.
It ruins the flow of the narrative because unless you leave it on a cliffhanger and we have to wait, then that makes sense. You know, like a mid-season finale or something. But when you're dealing with something that you really don't need a break from.
Yeah.
I mean, that last episode that we had before this prior break, it was good.
Yeah.
And we didn't really need a break from it because that last episode wasn't really a cliffhanger.
Yeah. Now, today we are going to be discussing episode, I believe, 7 or 6, or whatever you want to go with, and it's called Iron Squadron, directed by Saul Reese and written by Matt Michovitz. We get an interesting episode. I do want to say that we were way off. We had some, oh my Lord. I think Dave, we've had some overexcitement in our broadcast before where we really we take a bit of news and we run with it. I think we really hyped up our listeners this week with great disappointment because we, of course, saw in the preview leading up to this week's episode, the Outrider. At least that's what we thought it was, because it's the exact same freight that the Outrider was, which is from, of course, Shadows of the Empire.
Yes.
And, of course, that's the farthest thing from the truth. That's what we got. But you know what? It's also kind of not fair, because why would you do that to us Star Wars nerds who know everything about... And that's why it leads me to think that Filoni and the crew, they have plans down the road. because you don't introduce. It's like showing, yes, a much smaller scale, but it's no different to the Star Wars elite, like the hardcore fans like us who know everything about Star Wars. It's no different than dropping the Millennium Falcon on us in an episode, in a preview, and then us not thinking it's the Millennium Falcon. Oh, it's just another Y2, a YT light freighter. Yeah. No, you don't do that unless it's the Millennium Falcon. You don't toy with us like that. And that's for us Star Wars fanatics who know what the Outrider is. I don't think there's one fan out there who didn't think Dash Rendar.
Yeah. Any hardcore Star Wars fan from the 90s knows what that ship is.
Yeah.
And when we first saw it, I immediately got giddy. I'll be honest. I got so excited about it, and that's the one thing. As funny as it sounds, at first I didn't like. I was disappointed, like you were in this episode, but I had to separate my fanboyism from being a watcher of the show.
Yeah.
Did we get what we wanted? No.
No.
No. And I'll be honest.
We got Ezra 2.0.
Ezra 2.0, yeah. But if you ask me, in my opinion, it made sense. It made sense what those characters were there for.
All right, we're going to get into that because you're going to have to sell me on why it made sense. Because I don't think it does. But
well, it took me this morning to actually figure it out. Because
it's the tickle the ball syndrome.
Yeah,
that's what they did. And I you know what? And I'm very patient, and I love everything Rebels has done so far. So I'm not going to get into a bitch fest. But it's a little bit of an FU. Like, hey guys, the YT 2400 light freighter from Shadows of the Empire is back.
And plus the fact that they made it front and center.
And you have an emo Japanese anime character playing the role of the pilot. I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
No one cares about him.
No one cares about him. Where's our favorite rogue?
Yeah. So just a little bit of information on the YT 2400 light freighter for those of you that are not in the know. I don't want to get too fanboyish in this show and kind of alienate other casual listeners. But the YT 2400 light freighter that we saw this week in Rebels was utilized by the Rebellion as a troop transport. The YT 24 light freighter's first appearance. Now, let me backtrack. This is the official first appearance of the YT 2400 light freighter in the new Star Wars EU. As we know, Disney retconned when they took over. They retconned just about everything from the past except the movies and Clone Wars. So we've never seen the YT 2400 light freighter yet. This is the first time. However, let's get into the Wayback Time Machine again and pretend nothing was ever retconned. The actual first appearance is in Star Wars canon. Okay, not linearly. Star Wars canon-wise.
Yeah.
Star Wars canon-wise was in 1997 in the re-release of the Star Wars A New Hope, the special edition, where it is seen in the background taking off from Mos Eisley. The design was made more popular with the Star Wars Legends multimedia project, Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. Now, Shadows of the Empire came first.
Yes.
So linearly, the first appearance was in Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah, but you got to remember, Shadows of the Empire is considered Legends media now.
But hold on. But it also took place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, the Shadows of the Empire story.
Yes.
So technically, in terms of canon, even Legends canon, in 1997 was the first appearance of it in the New Hope. And George Lucas only put that in there when he was doing his whole special release edition that nobody likes. I do. I think it's okay.
Yeah.
That a lot of people don't like. He put that in there because Shadows of the Empire was already released at that time and a big hit.
Yes. And he wanted to actually make sure it was paid homage to.
Yeah, it had to be, especially because Shadows of the Empire was such a huge success with the fans. Why not do a nice little nod and a connection of the video game with the actual movie, the first number 4, but first Star Wars installment we ever seen, which is A New Hope.
And the thing that I do like about that during that time was the fact that Lucas literally understood that there were other things that carried the Star Wars torch after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And he acknowledged it. And that's how he acknowledged it. By when he did the re-releases, he started putting in these little nods like the YT showing up.
Yeah.
And I like that. That's actually really cool.
Now, a lot of people may recognize similarities to the Millennium Falcon and the new ship that we saw this week in the Star Wars Rebels. Again, the YT-2400 light freighter. And that's because it is within the same product line as the Millennium Falcon. The Millennium Falcon is known as the YT-1300 light freighter. It's no different than, let's say, Honda. Honda is the company. And you have the Accord, the Civic. And they look similar, but they're different.
They're totally different vehicles.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how the 2400 light freighter and the 1300 light freighter is. Now, one thing that I feel as a Star Wars fan that we're kind of missing the boat on in terms of these ships is the big thing that they called these things were a Corellian YT 1300 light freighter and a Corellian YT 2400 light freighter, and you realize we're really dropping the Corellian aspect when it comes to the new canon. And I bring this up, I don't want to get too far off track in terms of Star Wars Rebels, but I think it's something that we need to discuss in terms of Star Wars Rebels, because why do we not hear the words Corellian? How come we don't hear these things? For example, the ship that Sato is on is a Corellian Corvette.
Yeah, Corellian Corvette.
And yet they never say it.
Which is odd when you actually bring it up. Because
Dave, I want to get your thoughts on this, because what do you think? First off, Corellia was a huge part of the old EU.
Yes.
It was the place of Ford Motors. Okay, think again, going back to stuff that people can relate to. Ford Motors was the thing back in the day. It's where everybody wanted to work. It created, industrial boom in the cities that these old car vehicle makers were at. Corellia was that. Corellia was the planet where all the best spacecraft freighters were made.
Yeah, it was.
And that was the old EU. And yet in the new EU, we get nothing relating really to the importance of Corellia and how important they are in terms of the spacecraft we see in Rebels and in every single Star Wars installment. Almost every ship you look at, you can point to, yep, that was made, according to the old EU, was made in the shipyards of Corellia.
And you bring up a really good point, because it's one of those things in the old Star Wars they touched on, but in the new Star Wars, the new canon, they really...
Very vague.
And I don't know, it kind of dumbs it down, because I kind of like it.
It takes away from the rich backstory of where
the mythos.
Because again, Corellia was such an important part of shipbuilding.
But it was not just also shipbuilding, but also the beginnings of the Rebel Alliance, because they were remember in a lot of EU stories in the past, they were a faction that actually supported the Rebel Alliance. And you got to remember, it's basically kind of like a company literally taking a stance against the government.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of stories that dealt with it, how industry in Star Wars universe was affected by the Empire, and some companies really rallied against the Empire, but the only way they could rally was actually, we're not going to sell our goods in Empire space.
Right.
We'll only sell it out here in the outer reaches.
And when you look at that rich history of Corellia and how intricate the social politics of that planet as well, you sit and wonder, okay, is there a reason why they're leaving it in the back burner? Is it too rich of a society to delve into at this time? Do they not want to confuse the new audiences? Are they waiting for the right time to reintroduce the importance of it into the new EU? These are all questions I'm thinking. Now, because of that, I have a few things here pertaining to Corellia and Rebels. Corellia was a planet in the core worlds, of course, and their appearances, and again, we're talking new canon. So far, it was mentioned only in Star Wars Clone Wars twice. Star Wars Rebels Wings of the Master was mentioned only once in Rebels so far.
Yes.
With all of the ships that they have in Rebels, it was mentioned once. That is it. Anything else, let's say it was mentioned in Heir to the Jedi, the new book that takes place between New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, mentioned only. Star Wars New Hope mentioned, of course. Let's see, where Aftermath, the new books, and of course Aftermath Life Debt, it actually appeared. Have you read Aftermath yet?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's really good.
It has the first appearance in Aftermath. Everything else has been mentioned.
Yeah.
So yes, we are very new. We're at a very young state in terms of, or a very young early stage, I should say, for the new EU. We're only, maybe 2.5 years in?
2 years.
So I guess it would make sense, but I think they need to start paying their respects to how important Corellia is.
Well, not only that,
and Rebels, I think, is the prime show to really do that.
I do think that as well as like Rebels should be that one series that brings that out front and foremost, but you also got to remember Corellia is also the homeworld of some major characters in Star Wars.
Han Solo, number 1.
Yeah, Han Solo is the number 1. You have Wedge, who actually got introduced into Rebels.
Yeah,
just recently.
Yeah, you know what? Let's put a bookmark in that because I want to get too off track. But let's bring that up again in our next full Star Wars discussion after Rebels is up.
Yeah,
Corellia and the importance of it being Han Solo's homeworld. All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode here. The Ghost crew arrives at a planet to help evacuate anti-Imperial dissidents. They are assisted by another armed freighter that identifies itself as not Dash Rendar or not that of the Outrider, but Iron Squadron.
Iron Squadron.
Which forces an Imperial transport to retreat by dropping explosive cargo containers on it. Commander Sato explains that the Iron Squadron used to be led by his brother, but he was killed in combat, leaving the squadron under the leadership of his headstrong biatch of a nephew, Mart.
And
that name,
Mart.
Yeah.
Now, honestly, the funny part is the character. I actually read this in a production note for this episode.
Yeah.
The character of Mart, I think it's Matten.
Yeah.
That's the character's name.
Yeah.
It's a play on words. It's basically one of the writers.
Oh, okay.
For Rebels. And I'm like, but even that name, Mart.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. That's not a heroic name.
No,
that doesn't work.
Not at all. Now, I think the highlight of this episode, honestly, is the kind of the implications of this episode. Not necessarily what we saw, but some of the breadcrumbs that were laid on the ground for us to follow. I think that was more or less the importance of this episode. You see Grand Admiral Thrawn is briefed on by Capo. Did I say that right? Mia Capo? Is it Mia Capo or My Capo?
My Capo.
Okay, and tells Admiral Constantine to personally head there to take out the Iron Squadron and their crew of the Ghost. This is almost certainly a test, but from whom? Is it a test of Constantine? Is it testing Sato? As we see at the end of the episode, Thrawn was almost expecting him to show up and hoping to him to show up. The dislike between Thrawn and Admiral Constantine continues to brew.
And it's actually comical. It's actually really comical, dude. Because Thrawn's like going, I'm going to just throw this guy to the wolves.
Yeah.
He can't do anything.
Well, it's leading me to wonder, like, what's going to happen here? This can't just end positively. This can't just like, okay, we don't like each other. We already saw Thrawn lose his temper, 3 episodes ago?
Yes.
To where he almost he did get physically into an altercation with Constantine. He grabbed him by the collar and was going to beat his ass.
Yeah. And he basically lost his Thrawn cool.
Yeah. So was it a little too early for him to lose his cool? At first, I thought so. Because he seems so reserved and so in control of himself. And I was surprised that they showed him lose his cool so fast.
But the thing is, Constantine is such an incompetent officer.
Yeah.
It probably drives Thrawn crazy that this guy is working underneath me.
Well, is this going to end badly? Meaning, are we going to see Constantine actually end his life? Are we going to see him send him on a mission that he knows he's going to get killed on? I see I see Thrawn, I should say. I see Thrawn being above that. But at the same time, I also see his dislike for Constantine is very apparent.
It's very apparent, but I honestly think Thrawn at this point is going to use Constantine as a pawn because that's what Thrawn does.
Do you think eventually, though, that we'll see him, this pawn will get killed because of a decision Thrawn made?
Okay. Absolutely. Because, like, he's going to sacrifice the pawn sooner or later.
Yeah.
It's like a chess match. With Thrawn, everything's a chess match. He has his pawn. Well, I could sacrifice my pawn to do something. And he nearly did in this one, because he just laid him out there just to actually get attacked.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think the bigger relationship we saw was Thrawn versus Sato, which is a positive that I liked in the episode.
Yeah. Now, there wasn't any implications there, or any clues as to leading that there was a versus between the two of them, right? Up until this point.
Okay,
no. So I didn't miss anything.
No.
I was kind of I wasn't completely confident in my ability to pay attention since the start of the season, because I was like, okay, did I miss something here?
No.
Or did they finally introduce a different level or an additional layer to Thrawn, that he actually has a bit of a bone to pick with Commander, right? Commander Sato.
Commander Sato. And like, this is what I mean is, like, this episode, I had to really do a double to triple take of the entire episode to see, okay, what the episode was past my fanboyism.
Yeah.
And everything in Thrawn, every episode we've had Thrawn is about subtlety. Everything that he does is about subtlety. It's like it leads to a grander scheme.
Right.
So, like, while we look at it and see a simplistic episode, for the character of Thrawn, that's exactly what he wants. Everything is about subtlety to him. At the very end, the most important scene in the episode was actually Thrawn saying, "Oh, finally, I get to actually see what draws you out." He and just with that one line, that tells the audience that he's after Sato. He could care less.
Yeah. So is this what we've been hearing then? Because we know that he's been talking about these other rebel, I guess, skirmishes, kind of almost like they're not very important. Like, this isn't the rebel group I'm after. So
yeah.
Is it in fact more than just the Ghost Crew he's looking at, but Commander Sato's team, which includes the Ghost Crew?
Yes.
See, I didn't realize at that point his net was cast that far. It seemed like he was more interested in the Ghost Crew because of how dangerously effective they are.
No,
but it seems that he's fully invested in the entire that particular group of rebels, including Commander Sato and his entire fleet.
Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing that I thought about, and I'm like going, "Oh, that's a really cool element of Thrawn." When you piece everything together, all the subtle nuances that he's done in the episodes that he's done so far. The last episode we saw him, he was dealing with Hera,
right?
And the thing was, the whole thing about the Ghost Crew was not important to him. What he wanted to see was like what the Ghost Crew is made out of. And like the important thing was, if you notice, these two episodes, Thrawn's attacked personal elements to the people, to the things he wants to see how they're going to react. What does he do against Hera? He attacks her family's home planet, and basically kidnaps and, takes control of her home, and not just her home world, her actual house, her actual home.
Yeah.
And what did he want to see? He wanted to see if he can draw her out. And he did. He caught her red-handed. So what does he do? He lets her go. So, all right, let's see. So if that works on the rebels, the next time we see him, what does he do with Sato? He wants to actually draw Sato out. What does he do? He takes his nephew. He wants to see if basically taking.
Can we just call him his niece? We just call him his niece.
Yeah, taking his family. Will that draw him out? Is Sato willing to sacrifice his family to protect the Rebel Alliance? And he wasn't. Sato came out of nowhere to try to save the day. So Thrawn figured out, oh, okay. So, and in that last episode, that's why that last line is so important, because he says, oh, okay, this is how I get to draw you out. And then he says, till we meet again. And then for a fact he's going to do it again. But this time now he knows how to lay his trap. Yeah.
And when you look at it like that, and of course I know where your discussion is going, but it makes sense. Like I said at the very beginning.
It's dark. That's dark.
Yeah.
If you think about for a cartoon show, you're going to actually go after something personal.
Yeah, and as I said at the beginning of the show, it's not so much this episode and the things that were going on necessarily that was important, but it was all the little bits that we've been seeing since the beginning of the season. This was that last bit to show you that Thrawn's playing the long game.
Yeah,
he's such a strategist that he's not in a rush to catch these people. He's testing them and seeing them, exactly what you said, how at the very end when he said, okay, now I know what it took for you to come out of hiding. He's playing. He's poking the monster or the beast and trying to see how they will react. And, by doing that, man, he's learning everything about these people without even really engaging them in combat. He's learning almost everything about his enemy.
And dude, that last line when he says, "Till we meet again," that is just like, he's just pimp slapping the beast at that point.
Yeah, I love it.
Basically saying, okay, go ahead, run away. I'll see you again.
Yeah. And that's definitely the highlight of the episode. And I think if people look at it like that, I think it's actually a pretty damn interesting, I guess, foray into the building of Thrawn's character that much more in the universe.
Yeah, because you got to understand that Thrawn is more than just the atypical villain that you would expect in a cartoon.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're going for with him. The subtlety, when you see the subtleties, then this episode becomes much more better.
Yeah. Now, this does lead me to a few questions. We're now, let's just say 7 episodes in. We're about halfway through, meaning the winter break's coming up, and we're not going to have an episode until probably February, when the winter part of the season starts. And we have yet to been introduced. Well, first off, we have not seen Palpatine. We have not seen Vader, which we're okay with that.
Yes.
But we also have not been introduced to the creatures that Thrawn is known. Again, we're delving back into the old EU here for a moment. But Grand Admiral Thrawn is known for having a certain creature on his shoulder or his arms.
The Yazmir.
Or around the Yazmir. And I'm wondering, what's it going to take for him to finally have to use that? And at this point in the game, if we haven't seen it yet, are we going to see it? Are we going to see them? Are they going to be remained as a retconned element?
We should, depending on how Thrawn's story goes in Rebels, because you got to remember, Thrawn at this point, he faced a Jedi and basically made the Jedi look like an idiot when he just like literally gunslinged Ezra.
Yeah,
and I'm like going, obviously, Thrawn at this point is not worried about the Force. He's not worried about stuff like that right now.
And that was an interesting decision they made with him, and we already went into it. But when he did, in fact, the writers could have easily said, "Hey guys, this is the moment where we introduce the Yazmir. This is a perfect point in the story to do it. He's face to face with Ezra, who's a Jedi. Why not have him use the Yazmir?" There's obvious thought from the writing staff in when and if we're going to use this, because honestly, if he did have a Yazmir connected to his shoulder from the very beginning, I think it would have taken away from his prowess as a character. You would be like, oh, he's just a dude with like with a magical ring.
Yeah,
like he doesn't really have any true abilities in terms of military strategy. He's not that cool. He just has this beast that can repel the Force.
Yes.
So I think it's been smart up until this point that they have not introduced such a wild card, I guess, element, because it would kind of diminish his abilities as a character.
Yeah.
But do they introduce it, Dave?
I think they do once he starts running into more powerful Force users.
But I mean, will he ever? Besides Kanan, right?
Kanan, he has to deal with Kanan. I have to see what happens when Kanan runs into Thrawn, or even Maul. I mean, Maul's still going to play a major role, and Maul is really powerful.
Yeah,
he's very powerful. So I honestly think in a toe-to-toe battle with, say, someone like Maul, Thrawn has no chance. There's no chance. Maul is like the epitome. He's trained by Emperor Palpatine. There's no way he could lose in a fight with Thrawn. Maul is going to kill him.
Yeah, so you could see him maybe using the Yasmir
on a powerful force user like that.
So, like if he were to encounter Darth Maul,
yeah,
that would make sense. I could see that happening.
Like I agree with you. Like at this point, Ezra's not powerful. The whole point of this season is to show Ezra's growth as a character, and I think they did that really well in this episode as well. Because yeah,
I agree.
You know, you saw the parallel between the new Ezras, the 3 Ezras, as everyone on the internet is calling them, the Iron Squadron crew. They're like what Ezra was in season 1. Then we got to see the parallel what Ezra is now, where Ezra's more calculating. He thinks more outside the box as a strategician.
Yeah.
Strategist.
Or strategician. I like that word. We need to copyright that. Half Deborah, half magician, half strategist. I'm not joking. I like that word.
I like that. That is awesome.
All right. You know what? I think final thoughts on the episode. Then we need to wrap, and then we're going to take a break and then come into the main show. If you're listening live. If you're listening on demand, then of course this will be the end of the show very soon here. Dave, final thoughts of the episode in about 15 seconds.
I liked it. It took me a while to actually get to like this episode, but in the end of the day, it suits what the story is, what the story is about. So I do say that this is a good episode. Once you actually watch the whole episode together with all the other episodes, I think this makes the story even stronger.
All right. Star Wars Rebels. Let's see. This episode for me was, it's probably my least favorite episode of the year, I think. But again, taking a much more delicate approach to the story this year, I can see what the writers are doing in terms of developing Thrawn. Yes, Thrawn wasn't the highlight or the focus, I should say, of this episode. However, it was this episode was there to build up his character in terms of what his ultimate plan and end game is. And if you look at it like that, I think it's a pretty fun episode and not a throwaway episode. I saw a lot of complaints online, a lot of people that do reviews, even some big outlets that do reviews were just bitching about this episode. I'm like, look, guys, it wasn't that bad. For a minute, get off the fact that there's a snot-nosed brat Ezra lookalike. Okay, just forget that for a moment, get past it, and realize that kid was a means to an end. Yeah. It was a writing device to introduce a much more important part of the Star Wars Season 3 plot.
Ease your fanboyism.
All right, we're going to go to a very quick break. We're going to play some of our intro, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to get into Star Wars news, Han Solo news, Princess Leia news, everything. We've been away for about 2 weeks, so we got a lot to cover. If you're listening on demand, just push play on the next episode. Thank you, everybody.
May the Force be with you.
Hello, this is Stormtrooper 1, and if you've missed any portion of the show, you can always head over to FromTheBactaTank.com and listen to the show at your leisure. We're also on Stitcher, Smart Radio, Stitcher.com, search Bacta, and that is to your favorites. Thank you, and listen responsibly. And may the Force be with you. And long live. Thank you for listening to From the Bacta Tank. And From the Bacta Tank is executive produced by Michael Flores and Dustin Lucas. Hosted by Michael Flores, David Zabal. You can find out more about our show by going to www.fromthebactatank.com. You can also find us on Twitter at FromBactaTank, as well as Facebook, facebook.com/FromTheBactaTank. Thank you.